I already have a feeling that this panel today is not going to go the way we scripted it. It's all good. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. I am super excited to be with these ladies. They are highly accomplished, very driven, and it's an honor to be with them today. My name is Sherri Privitera. I'm a senior principal at Populous. We are a design firm that loves designing places where people love to be together, such as women's professional sports. So today, our panel, I'm going to let them all introduce themselves because I know I will not do that justice. So in just a moment, we'll do that. But our panel today is Raise Hell and Raise the Game, investing in women's pro sports through advocacy and representation. So we're going to talk about investment, not just in dollars, but representation, advocacy, using our voices to push women's sports forward. Our panelists come from different backgrounds. There are some investors, a couple of former athletes, turned executives, some business leaders, but they all share the commitment to break barriers and drive real change. So we're going to dig in and talk about our resources and how each of us can be part of this movement. So I'll just start off, because I'm going to ask this to everyone, and I'd like to ask you, each of you has a unique journey that led you here to today. I would love for you to introduce yourself, share what initially drew you to this space, your background, and what your current role is. Fran, I'll start off with you.
Well, dang. Are we using this mic or do we need that? Okay, cool.
You're good.
Okay,
They want me to
all right.
dance. That's what
Yeah, I do later. Hi, everybody. Fran Harris. I am a Dallas girl. Got to Austin many years ago on a full scholarship at the University of Texas, where I became a member of the NCAA's first undefeated women's basketball championship team. We were 34-0. We lost 9 games in my 4 years. That is a crazy run. I knew that I wanted to be in television, so when all the TV guys came to cover us, I would ask them what they did, and I ended up interning at all the stations in Austin when there were only 4 stations in Austin. And now today, I launched a sports brand, a better for you women's hydration brand on Shark Tank in 2021. Some of you may have seen me telling Mark Cuban off in that episode. That went well. And just most recently, I raised almost $1 billion to bring a WNBA team to Austin and didn't get the team. So that was a little plot twist right there. But we'll talk about that later.
Okay, Karina.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to go in the row.
My name's Karina LeBlanc. I used to be a soccer player as a goalkeeper, which I think is the best position in the world. Some people say crazy. I call myself genius. Used to be shy, and I played for about 20 years. I played in 5 World Cups, a couple Olympics, won a medal, and all that fun stuff. And then I retired, and they call it the athlete's first death, because you're like, all of a sudden, I'm just Karina. And I realized the sport was a platform. I did a UNICEF trip, and I was in the middle of nowhere in Honduras. And all of a sudden, I was this shy kid who grew up and moved to Canada. Nobody looked like me, and I was like, oh my God, what's my purpose? I made my first friend, and the next day I went to soccer practice, and that's how I got into soccer. Fast forward to Honduras. I'm here in this city. It was one of those most unique moments where I realized that 4 of those girls were wearing the first ever jersey when I first went to my first soccer practice. And I realized I was exactly where I was meant to be, and this sport was a platform. I went on to do TV and stuff, but now I'm the executive vice president of RAJ Sports, and it's the first ever ownership group to own an NWSL team, which is the Portland Thorns, and a WNBA team. And I love you, Fran. Unfortunately, we got the WNBA team. But I think for me, I took the path. I was a general manager, president. I learned that my voice mattered, and I think this is one of the things. It always took people seeing in me what I didn't see in myself. And now we're in a position we're hoping to cement the global epicenter of women's sports, because we just created a facility with Populous, $150 million. Woo! Where you walk in, and it's what's possible. On the left-hand side, you'll have a village where people will eat breakfast. I call it the Olympic Village. You'll have the women's soccer. You'll have women's basketball. Most importantly, this facility represents what's possible in women's sports. Now we know, my 4-year-old daughter's walking in, she's like, I'm going to be a professional soccer player, basketball player. I'm like, yes, you are. But the exciting thing is I get to be a part of something that I could never have dreamt of. And I think this is what's exciting about the conversation here today, is we're all here leaning into what's now possible, but we never even thought was possible.
Yeah, that's good. Nia, how about you?
So my name is Nia Batts. I am the general partner at Union Heritage Ventures and also work sort of at our larger investment management firm in Michigan. I was a high school athlete, but never a college athlete. I was a very competitive track runner. I ran in 2 Junior Olympic Games, and then I was injured. But I think it was sort of growing up in those formative years that I really just started to understand like the discipline behind athletes and was really sort of inspired by that. It's no sort of secret that so many women that play sports, like 94% of women who play sports become sort of C-level executives. And I always am interested in these types of like trends and correlations. I spent most of my background in media and entertainment at what's now Paramount Global. And we were everything but sports. That's kind of what they used to say. We were all forms of entertainment, but not sports. Sports was always its other thing. This thing that almost felt like untouchable that like even us at Paramount couldn't really play in. We weren't ESPN, we weren't Disney. And I've always been interested in places and spaces that people that look like me aren't supposed to be in. And I think that was really the genesis of my sort of interest in sports and sort of seeing some of that through Sophia, and then as we explore additional opportunities as well. But I think prioritizing women and women athletes and high-performing women leaders is the part that I get most excited about.
Woo!
That's my best friend.
Sophia, how about you?
Hi guys, my name's Sophia Bush, no relation. Always have to clarify in Texas. My people are from Canada, actually, and New Jersey. But anyway, I started, working as an actor really young, right out of college. I'm probably the least athletic person on this stage. I have terrible asthma. I think when I would have to run off the field during my AYSO soccer games, I realized I would never play in an Olympics with you. It's fine. I'm not sad about it still at 40. But the interesting thing for me is a correlation that I discovered being a really nerdy kid that went to an all-girls school and thus was taught my opinion was valuable. The people I often become the best of friends with in my life, the women I tend to gravitate towards in rooms, are leaders, they're investors, they're other outspoken folks, they're people who use their platforms, and they often were athletes. And it's not lost on me that girls who grow up to be women that went to schools like mine, or girls who grow up to be women that played high school or collegiate sport, make up 90% of the women in C-suites. I think that the fact that we see 1 in 2 girls dropping out of sport by the age of 14 is a literal crisis for the country, because not only is it creating the kind of inequity that we all know too well, being investors and advocates in the space, but it's also creating a real vacuum for leadership. And so I'm incredibly passionate, as a screaming fan on the sidelines of all of these sports, but also as a team owner and also as an advocate for women and girls. Yeah. And I am lucky enough to call this woman my best friend. And so as an Angelino, I've claimed Detroit as my home away from home for 20 years. And I'm also a general partner at Union Heritage Ventures. And much like you talk about what your daughter gets to see now, I think it took some support from the generation above us, looking at the two of us and saying, you're not just angel investors. You should really institutionalize this. You too can do this. And I realize even now, in the last few years, the shift that happens when we walk into rooms like this and meet the women coming up behind us, and they know they can do this too. So on and off the field, representation is really important to us.
I just feel like we should say all together, thank you for being a friend.
Yes. You got a voice, girl. Oh.
You said you were going to sing, and here's the slipper over here.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
All right, Sherri. No, sorry, Sherri.
Everybody just gets in line and starts to snap.
That's great. Sophia, I really appreciate that because my daughter is 14, and the last couple of years we have been hanging in by a thread to keep her in sports.
Yeah.
And it is really what I love about women's sports is that it's about societal change, and it's so much more of a larger story. So knowing about that, it's not monetarily representation, advocacy, and using our voices. Fran, you and I have chatted earlier about raising hell. And I know it's a surprise already to the audience. What does that mean to you? And actually, I'll ask every one of you what that might mean in your respective fields. But Fran, start us off.
I don't know. I've just always been the person, the kid who asks why. And very early, the message we get as women about asking why and about raising hell is like, women don't do that, girls don't do that. So that's always been a part of my legacy. But in the work that we're doing now, it can look like a lot of different things. It can mean asking people, you say that you're about inclusivity, but I'm really listening to what you're doing, and we don't see inclusivity. It can be about why aren't there, and we'll talk about this, why aren't there people of color on this cap table in a sport that is 90% people of color? That doesn't make sense to me. And just having the courage for me to challenge status quo, to challenge what's always been. Doesn't matter whether you're talking about your religious establishments and institution or your educational. It's having the courage and teaching our girls and making it okay for them to say, well, wait, hold up, wait a minute. Why are we doing it this way? Because we've done this for 100 years. But that doesn't mean that's the right way to do things. So and bringing that into women's sports, you would think, because that's what we've done all of our lives, is challenge the status quo and challenge what is. You would think it would be more welcome, but it's not. It's more of the institutional walls that say, well, no, this is how we're going to do that. The people with the money have the power. And I say, why? When the people who you seem to think are powerless are making you your billions. So how does that make sense? So it's literally just challenging what doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I love that. Sophia, what about you? What does that look like to you?
I mean, yes. I'm like that part, what Fran said. I think, I guess the way I would explain it, similarly to you being a young athlete and being told no, as a young artist, I was told, okay, you got to pick a cause, go to the gala, write a check, keep your mouth shut. I was like, have you met me? I'm an absolute nightmare. I don't keep my mouth shut about anything. What are we talking about? And I was told I couldn't do that. You won't have a career if. And now people in my industry are, looked at kind of suspiciously if they don't have an opinion. When you have a platform, you have a privilege. And if you don't spend your privilege, you're just a hoarder. And, no offense to the men in the room. I'm assuming you're all great. You're here. So thank you. But the ones who aren't coming to these panels, who hoard wealth and power, who hold people like us out of those spaces, are a problem. But they're not just a problem for us. My mission in life is to burn a white heteronormative patriarchy to the ground. And by the way, it doesn't just hurt my best friend who's a woman of color or me as a woman who has fake proximal power, let's be honest, white ladies. It hurts those men too. White men are committing suicide at the highest rates of anyone in our country. So the system doesn't work for any of us. And if we build a more equitable system, if we create gender parity, pay equality, all these things, it doesn't mean anyone gets less. It actually means everyone stands to get more. So when people are like, well, you have these moral opinions, you ladies, and I'm like, you don't want to raise the GDP of the whole country? The math and the morals meet on this. And so for me, it feels incredibly important to spend the privilege of my platform to call people in. It can't just be on you three women to educate women who look like me. I have to do it. Y'all are tired. You've done it. I have to be the first line of defense in the same way that as a woman, I look to the men who show up to talks like this, who clearly care about equity, who clearly are allies, and I'm like, I need you guys to talk to men about sexual violence. We can't just do it. Yes. So I think it's really important for us to look at whatever version of proximity to power we have as a tool in our tool belt, and then also be unafraid to have the honest conversations, because the more we can kind of pierce the veil and cut through the bullshit, I think the faster we can build a better society, we can build better sports, we can build better teams. Anything you see outside can be better if we kind of get over our fear of calling out and we call in.
Yeah.
So that's what I think about raising hell. Like I said, I'm no pain in the ass. I will be a pain.
Okay, that's wonderful. Nia, how about you?
I mean, I feel like that was a very
That's-
good
I know,
response.
yeah,
And
we could just
a lot of
move
probably,
on, yeah.
you know,
We can move-
what I would also say, I mean, to me, raising hell is also making sure that we understand sort of the interconnected nature of sport and business and money and sort of all of these things, right? And so I'm always interested in like parity and equity. And so making sure that people are paid fairly, but also understanding how the economics sort of flow through sports. Having come primarily from ad-supported cable, we know the importance of getting buy-in from partners and sponsors and also making sure that they are valuing our athletes, valuing the leagues. You know, it's thinking about, you know, television rights and distribution rights as well so that we can continue to provide opportunities and access for the fans to engage with, you know, with athletes and communities around the country that they may not, you know, that they may not otherwise have access to. So all of these things are really important, and you have to sort of stay on all of them simultaneously. Kind of like in my head, I just always think you have to stay on their necks. You have to be relentless about making sure that at every opportunity you're advancing the conversation, that we're you know, promoting sport in general, that everything is connected to the communities, and that at the end of the day, I think about like the young girls and women that see things and are able to believe that a different future is possible for them. And so sport feels like activism. It is storytelling. Every part of it is raising hell because it's about the mission of trying to make sure that young girls, you know, across the country, across the world, feel as though they're not limited and that they're powerful and, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's so funny as you're talking, I'm like, yes, because, and going back to your daughter, so I learned at a young age, my father said to me, never make the fact that you're a black woman be 2 strikes against you. And I was a shy kid, right? And I was meant to be part of that statistic that dropped out of sport. Because I remember being the shy kid, then telling the world I wanted to be an Olympian, because I looked at a male at the Olympics who had a Caribbean background win gold, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I couldn't see myself in it. And then I had a coach who cut me. But you know what? Being cut was the best thing that ever happened to me, because the next year I did 15 minutes more every single day. I put in the work, and I felt I deserved it. And it's interesting because if we're having this conversation on International Women's Day, and what if every single one of us did 15 minutes more every single day towards being that person that we need to be, towards helping women's sports get to where it is, towards being the people that we were meant to be on this earth. And I learned that lesson at age 14. The next year I went to the coach and he was like, ho, you're back. I was like, you told me I wasn't what you were looking for. I tried out for year older, and then I made the national team while they were figuring out mortgages. I was trying to figure out who to take to prom. But I tell this story because for me, I learned at a young age that my voice mattered. Because if I put in the work, it's my story, it's my unique journey. And now being in this position where, you know, we've created a facility that people are like, okay, it's the first of its kind, right? When people walk in there, and this is where I'm raising hell, because people are like, okay, let's talk about this $150 million facility. I'm like, no, it's not a facility. It's when you walk in, the young girls, my young daughter is going to be like, I can be this. It's our generation who will probably cry when we walk into this building because we're like, wait, we never even thought this was possible. Or the 80-year-old woman who couldn't play sports because that was never an option. Or the man or the girl dad who was like, wait, this is great for my daughter. Or maybe they understand that walking into this building represents something. So for me, raising hell today is not just about talking about what we're building. It's talking about our journeys and realizing that all of us, if we give 15 minutes more towards raising hell, what could we do on this earth, right? And that's why as everyone here is talking, I'm like, yeah, see it to believe it. Because when I was younger, I didn't see it. But I had to believe it because I was surrounded by like-minded people, and that's what sport does. You're surrounded by people who think alike like you, and you're connected on something bigger than them and yourself. And I remember when I retired, and Fran, I remember being like, where are my people? Like, how is everybody so on their own, and why are women fighting women? But then I realized that, like, your people are there. You've just got to go find them. And then when we connect on something bigger than ourselves, we can do the impossible.
So good. So we're going to start talking, keep going about investing. Sophia, we'll start with you. What's one thing you wish you would have known when you first started considering getting in this space and investing?
Oh God, I mean, if I could look back at, you know, the first year we wrote our first check, I think I would have just wished I'd known we deserved to be there. It was kind of like, well, what are they doing in there? And we've got some friends in that half a generation kind of above us that are launching companies in like the mid 2000s, and we were like, well, who's involved in that? And we started kind of fishing around and poking around, and it was exciting, certainly, but I wish I had kind of walked into those rooms in my mid 20s knowing I deserved to be there like all the bros were. And I love being able to be in rooms, particularly with young women that are curious about these spaces, because I want you all to know that you deserve to be here. And I also think it's really important that we kind of figure out how to undo that misnomer, like you were talking about, Fran, that it's like, it's the richest people who've made the most money that are the oldest that start investing in stuff. It doesn't have to be that. You can get involved with an angel list. You can start writing really small checks. You can show up and work in these spaces and learn them as you go. And there doesn't have to be some barrier. You don't have to be like 65 and retired with a great IRA to invest in something. You can start now.
I love that. Yeah, Nia, talk about diversity across all aspects of sports and how that plays into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I think about diversity and diverse viewpoints, and I think about how not only important it is, but the sort of the efficacy of growth, the well-roundedness of kind of ideas, it's really just about trying to center those that have not traditionally been centered. And I think when you center women as athletes, women as leaders, that starts to sort of like permeate across industries. I mean, you mentioned Ally Bank, and like Andrea Brimmer, for example, at Ally is such a great example of like a woman in the, in that role was able to make such a significant commitment for Ally to say, we're going to spend equally on men's and women's sports. And what that does is that grows the inventory that needs to be made available, because you have a major advertising partner that is saying, I'm going to put this money into the ecosystem. And so that diversity of perspective, centering women in a conversation about women's leadership, women's sports, doing it across the various like industries and business units that are sort of in the sports and entertainment ecosystem is incredibly important, because it's symbiotic and it leads to the growth of, of the leagues, of the industry, resources for the athletes, economics for the athletes, new, ideas. I mean, like Unrivaled is interesting as well, because, when you have athletes that are working for a portion of the year and we're not really thinking about the families that they have, and if they have to go overseas for for several months to be able to generate income to continue to run their lives and sort of grow their careers, now you're talking about a league where you're able to stay here in the States. Women athletes who also like have families or head of households don't have the same type of disruption to their lives, and the idea is that hopefully that league grows. But that type of diversity and perspective, thinking about what could we do that would make the lives of these women better, starts to help you conceptualize different opportunities, new opportunities, where everyone can participate in the economics, but especially the athletes that are actually driving these sports, these leagues. And so I think, diversity touches every aspect of it, but to the extent that you use it and step into the power of it, which is to see things differently and to make different decisions and invest in different ways than we have traditionally.
I just want to dip in and say something related to what these two said, because nobody ever tells us or teaches us as women, and probably guys either, but it impacts us more, how to express your value. Right? So you keep believing that unless you have millions of dollars, you can't invest. That's what stops people from investing, because they think, well, I don't have enough money. I don't have enough money. Because nobody teaches us how to express our value. If I know the mayor of Austin, that's capital. And nobody says that that's valuable. So you have to walk in the room saying, okay, maybe I'm not going to put $3 billion into this deal, but I know every freaking person in San Antonio. I know this person, I know this person, I know this person. That is valuable. And you can walk into a room just like the dude or the woman who put their $3 billion in there and go, yeah, you may have the money, but you're not going to get this done. You're not going to get your plumbing done. You're not going to get permits as quickly as I can because you don't have the real capital. And that's what nobody tells us. So we feel like we don't belong in those rooms because nobody has taught us how to convey the value that we bring the moment you walk into that room. There's no reason a WNBA player is not on a cap table of something in the WNBA. That doesn't make sense to me. Right? So we have to start teaching our girls how to convey what their value. There's relationship capital, there's social capital, there's network capital. And yeah, there's money. But you don't get anywhere in this business without all four of those.
So how do we? So how do we do that? Fran,
I just said it. Literally.
I'm just going to go
Make
change
a list
everybody.
of who you
Make
know,
a list
literally.
and go do
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
These are the people
And
I
believe
know.
it.
These are the people that I know. These are the spaces that have been changed because I was in that room. These are the people that I can connect you to. Once we start to teach girls that means something, that's valuable in a deal. That's a deal-making point. If I'm the only one who can get Kurt Watson to do something, then you might want to have me in your deal. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's that simple with girls, right. Well, your dad is this. Like, that's a network. My dad runs the whatever it is. That's a powerful network. So it's literally just having that conversation with girls.
Awesome. Karina, oh, go ahead.
Yes. Because I can't tell you, I mean, it was at least a decade of investing.
Me too.
Before a man who's a great mentor to me said, what do you mean you're not profit participating on the intros you're making? And I was like, what? And I was like, well, if I know somebody who's good for somebody, obviously I'm gonna, and he goes, no. Every time I make an introduction, if someone gets an investment, I'm part of that deal. And I was like, oh God, I've lost so much money in the last 10 years. But I never thought about it because I'm nice.
Yes.
But women are expected to be nice, and men's niceness is often regarded as capital.
Yeah.
And it's not inappropriate to say, if I introduce you to the mayor, I want in on the cap table.
Absolutely.
That's not shitty. That's
Exactly.
smart.
Yeah.
And I think to your point, we can't just sit up on stages like this and be like, take up space, change the game. Like, go take up your space.
Yeah.
You got to do it for yourself too.
Absolutely. You can't be afraid to say,
Yeah.
I want in on that deal.
And if
I don't
you-
know how many words that was,
Yeah.
but you need to learn to
Yeah.
say those
Say
words. I
'em.
want in on that deal.
Yes.
Yeah, and you can't be afraid to convey and to show and prove that your value is
Yeah,
more than
absolutely.
just the capacity of the financial investment that you can
yes.
make. And
Yeah.
so we are always actively having that conversation
Yep.
where, sort of on the angel side and for sports related investments, maybe it's not millions of dollars like the next investor, but there's a variety of other things that we can,
Yep.
do to support a league, a team, efforts in the community, sort of promotional efforts, like even, marketing and advertising campaigns, again, that are storytelling and centering women. I mean, sports is sort of the greatest storytelling device.
Yeah.
Like you just, there's ups, there's downs. Like you have fans, and you're, rooting for players and, for the trajectory of the season. And I think we have to also understand, remember, and believe that we also can tell our stories better than other people, often as well. And to really claim that, to have ownership, over sort of that idea when we're in these conversations and negotiating and talking about what type of value we would be able to provide.
You know what's crazy is that everything you guys are saying here, or you all are saying here, is so important because you see these professional athletes and you think they've got it together. But to your point, if they heard all of this, it'd be a different world, because I wish I'd heard that earlier in my career. I wish, but you see them and they figured out how to nail their lane as an athlete. But they are not figuring out how nailing their lane as an athlete helps them nail their lane in other ways. And I think that's what's so important now, and the change we're seeing now in women becoming former athletes being part of investment groups is because it's having women like this come in and be like, hey, hold on, let's see your value. Let's help you see who you are. Let's help you see the power of what you can be. And it's not just about scoring hoops or scoring goals or doing those things. It's your life has prepared you for something bigger. And the bigger is this. And when it becomes personal to these athletes, because you see them, that's why they're excelling. It's that high performance mindset. How can we take this high performance mindset and apply it to something else? But it takes people like this pulling them inside and be like, that's within you. And that's what needs to happen more.
Is that, yes. So, Karina, you said at a young age you had to be your own hype woman. I definitely feel like you could be our hype woman. I want you to be mine on my board of hype. And I think as we were talking about that and building our self-confidence and knowing how to go own it and claim it, can you just talk about how you did that? Like, how did you become your own hype woman to build your confidence? And how do we do that to help other girls?
See, like previously to what they said, I had like one answer, but then I'm like, man, if I had this, I'd be such a hype woman. but
you didn't have it.
I didn't have it, and I had to find it. So when I retired, like I was always the louder person. I was always the last one signing autographs and like being that person. But then I remember, like, my coach had said to me, if you think your purpose on this earth is to kick a soccer ball for a country, I failed you. And I'm like, what does that mean? And I remember then I got invited to tables because I was the loud one, right? And, like, she might have an opinion. But then I second-guessed myself, being like, do I have anything to say here? And when I would speak, I remember one big board meeting, a man said to me, he's like, well, in all my 15, 20 years of being in this position, I've never heard anything like that. And I was like, and I was like, should I say it, should I not? And I said, well, in all my 20 plus years of playing professional soccer and my whole life of being a woman, and then I, like in my head, I was like, is this okay? But again, the thing is, there was nobody else like me sitting at the table. And I was like, but then I just leaned into it.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because I realized that I was at the table, but I wanted more of me at the table.
Yeah.
And I wanted my words to matter, and I didn't care if I was disruptive, but I was like, this is so important because it was done a certain way doesn't mean it has to continue to be done that way. And I was like, I'm just gonna speak here. And the best thing about it was you find your allies. And then it took one man opposite after the awkward silence to be like, she was right. And I was like, I'm right. But then it's continuing to put yourself in those uncomfortable situations and getting comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And I learned to, I'm just always uncomfortable, but I'm comfortable with it. I'm always in this space of like, my journey was not easy. It was hard for a reason, and it wasn't about me. And I look at the players now, like in Portland, we literally are creating a space where these athletes, they saw me be a general manager, and they are like, I can do that. I don't just have to be a coach, or I have to go in this lane. And now being a part of RAJ Sports and what we're doing, they're seeing that. And they're seeing different women, and you said see to believe it. That's why I was like, yeah, girl, that's fun. I like that. Like, it's so important to have a voice and maybe make the awkward pause and make people uncomfortable because I deserve to be here. And it's not always easy, right? Like, easy sometimes is to take a step back and like, I'm just going to do it on my own. It's sometimes hard to be in that situation being like, I'm not going to be liked. They're not going to agree with what I say, but I'm still going to say it. And now I'm finally in a position where I'm surrounded by, we have a female owner, her name's Lisa. She went into fashion. She grew up in sports. She went into fashion because there was no space for her. But now I'm sitting at the table with another woman who's building a facility. It's like, how do we do this differently for women? How do we make it for women? Like all these facilities, men. And you know this because you sat at the table with her. How do we make this about women? How do we make it about families? How do we be intentional with it? And the best thing about this is it will be the first of its kind, but many more will follow. So it's resetting that bar of what's possible. And the only reason I got here was I loved being uncomfortable. And I loved being like, I'm really not doing the right thing here, but maybe it works. And I guess that in that way became my hype woman. But for me, I was surrounded by like-minded women where I'm just wanting to be everybody's hype woman, right? Because I'm like, if we're here, what can we do together? Let's go, you know, because I finally feel like I'm not speaking. I'm not the only one at the table anymore. Everybody's figured out their lanes. Like I look at Fran, I'm like, girl, what can I take you in my pocket and steal some of these things? Because I see all of them. I'm like, wow. And we can pick pieces from each of them and figure out how to be our own high people so that we can do big things.
Yep.
Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah.
Can I just add something to that? Because I love that you are being so honest about being uncomfortable. And I'm going to, like, I didn't expect to share this vulnerability with you, but here we are. My therapist recently said to me, he goes, "You're very unflappable." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, you just seem fine all the time. Like, you're very confident. You're good." And I was like, "I'm a nightmare. What are you talking about?" I'm the most stressed out. I'm always worried about something. Nobody's meaner to me than me. Like, the internet, please. Trolls, you wish. And I realized something where, and I'm sure there's a better way to do this, self-care. We're all learning, clearly. I'm talking about my therapist. But I realized, like, I'm used to being uncomfortable. And I got to a point where I was like, I'm nervous. I don't know if I'm sure of anything, but I want to do this, so I'm going to get on with it. And it's like I put the self-doubt voice, unfortunately I can't leave it on the side of the road, but I put it in the back seat of the car and I got on with it. And I think there's this kind of misnomer for us that you're supposed to have it all together or have all the answers and then you'll be ready. And you see it in statistics. Women apply for jobs when they're 90% sure they're qualified for the job description. And men apply at 40%. And I'm like, oh, well, I clearly have to make up my own 50% of self-doubt here and get on with it. And I think it's really important, especially for women. I know it's true for all of us, but especially for women, to not let your fears or your self-doubt hold you back. Like, get on with it. Because I had to learn that the way I like to hype you up is the way you hype me up. So I might be talking nonsense to myself in my head, but if anyone ever spoke to Nia that way, I'd punch them in the throat. So, like, I need to show up for myself the way I show up for her, and vice versa. And I think if you can start to sort of encourage yourself like a stranger, or put your little self-doubt monster in the back seat of the car, you'll probably get on with it a little faster. And then you will be the one with the value add at the table. And those rooms and those dynamics will change because diversity of thought and experience will suddenly be in the room. So we got to get on with it.
No, but I love what you said just about, and we talk about this a lot, but, you know, if it's sort of an imposter syndrome or like when you finally make it into the room, like feeling like you deserve to be there. And I just remember, especially at Paramount for so many years and with different networks, hearing, well, you're not the demo, you're not the demo, you're not the demo for this network. I mean, I'm thankful now that in our investing, like, very much am the demo, but I'm like, I am a 40-year-old Black woman with disposable income. Like, I am everybody's demo. So I center myself in everything, what I think about it, if I think it's good. And there's power in that. And so part of it is also using that to your advantage, making it a superpower. It's not something anymore to sort of make you shrink. Like, I have an inordinate amount of confidence most of the time because when you get into these rooms, you realize, okay, everybody in this room doesn't necessarily deserve to be in this room. And I didn't know that's what this room was talking about. Now I know what this room is talking about. And so it's always really lovely when you see like powerful women in these boardrooms looking after one another. But like the goal, the work for us in so many respects is always the same. It's like making sure that like once we do get there, we support one another, we support the sport, we support all the executives that are working like across industries and varying capacities that help bolster just this idea of sport and how we tell stories through it.
Fran, we're going to switch gears a little bit. You just went through an incredible process to bid for a W team here in Austin, and the results were not what you had hoped for, and on the rest of us as well. So can you talk a little bit about that process and then the encouragement you can give Austinites for the future?
Well, it started when, I'm kidding. So, first of all, in my introduction, I failed to mention that I actually played on the WNBA's first championship team with the Houston Comets. And I buried that fact for this question because it made my journey toward bringing a team to Austin more relevant. So I'm in Houston. I play for Houston. First game, 16,000 fans. My family's in. I mean, it's incredible to think that when I played in college, there was no WNBA. There was no professional. So I had to go play in not too bad places. Italy, Switzerland. Those were great places. But some of my teammates and contemporaries were playing in some terrible places. And so we dreamed of the day that there would be a WNBA, something that really could last. There had been like 15 tries at women's professional basketball in my lifetime, and none of them had lasted more than maybe 2 or 3 years. So when you're standing there on the court stretching with 16,000 people in there, I remember being just extremely emotional about that moment that I was still young enough to be playing. But the second thought that came into my mind was, who were the people who were owning these teams? And none of them looked like me. None of them were women, not even, white, red, white, and blue women. None of them were women. It was all guys. They were all NBA owners. And I made the decision, and I go, one day I'm going to own a WNBA team. So coming to this moment where Austin is my home now from Dallas, I mentioned that, and where you start to put together a team and you realize, like, no, there's no blueprint. I can't download audiobook on how to do this. You got, there are 4 parts. I'm like, you got to go raise some money. You got to have buy-in from the city. I know what the 4 things are. And so that journey was absolutely amazing because it started one way and it finished another way. And I'll just say that I was part of an original group that I left. The lesson in that is that when you get to the table, you can't be afraid to excuse yourself from the table if the table that you're sitting at doesn't value you. So I excused myself from a table in the middle of my bid. Now, some people thought I was absolutely crazy. What are you doing? Just deal with it. Just eat it. Just don't worry about it. And I'm like, if I'm not valued, it ain't happening. Because if you don't value me with my profile, literally, you're going to value WNBA players who are just starting in their careers. If you don't value people who look like me, you are not the group for me. So I left. And I cannot tell you, people were like, are you okay? Can I get your therapist number? Like,
Yes. Trevor is lit. He's great.
Are you seriously leaving this? And I was like, my coach, when you said unflappable, my coach who was, Hall of Famer Jody Conrad, most of you guys are here, know that was my coach. She told me that when I was freshman, she was like, you're unflappable. I had no idea what that word meant. But that came in handy when it was time for me to understand that just because I pulled up to this table, that I wasn't going to eat at that table. They were not planning to let me eat at that table. Right? So I'm like, well, fine. I just went hired another investment banker. Like, it was because of my athletic background, I knew you always have to have, what are we going to overtime? You always know you got to have something in your bag to get to your next step. So I pulled up to a great table and put that table together with the help of my team. And it was the most phenomenal experience I have had because, number one, I had 2 billionaires in my group. Let's start there. One was a woman and one was a guy. And they were both, we're all capitalists, let's keep it a buck, but they were heart-centered. The first thing Mark Lazary said to me, you guys know Mark Lazary, he used to own the Bucks. He said, we were having dinner in New York, and he said, I'm just amazed at the value that you put this whole thing together. Like, you put this whole thing together. And, I didn't tell him that. He had done his homework. He was like, that value is incredible. And so when I think about the question that you're asking me, it's like it didn't go the way that I wanted to go, but it didn't go, we couldn't have done anything better or differently. The NBA wants the NBA owners who invested in us when I played 30 years ago to eat, to get their return on their investment. Like, that's not my opinion. You can look on the internet. Like, it was obvious NBA teams are going to get WNBA franchises. I don't know how long. I feel like we're playing double dutch, like I'm trying to get in the game, and they'll let me know when I can get in. But the reality is there's nothing we could have done differently or better to get the bid. If the decision is we need to let NBA owners get into this and get some of their money back. So the way I felt, I was pissed for like 48 hours because I'm a competitor, right? So I'm literally pacing the floor. My friends were just like, what is going on? And part of it was that there was nothing I could do about it. It's not like I can go get in the gym and shoot 2,500 shots because it's going to make our bid. There's nothing I can do about it. So I did the next best thing that I could think of, and I am going to, where's Tracy? I am going to announce this. So when I didn't get the bid for the WNBA, I am launching a professional development league next year.
Okay, Fran.
League! You want to give me a team? I'm going to do a league!
If they close the door, you go in the window, baby. Yes.
That's right.
What's the saying? Never underestimate the power of
Never.
a pissed off woman. My golly.
the truth.
Okay, so we're closing in on our time. So I want to ask a couple of rapid fires. So if we could go through really quickly, I want to do two things. What's a tangible action someone in this audience can do today to move the needle? What is the call to action to this room? And the second thing is women's sports will reach their full potential when. So we'll go down the line. Who wants to start first?
Down there.
I have one for what you can do right now. I would say, like, buy some apparel. Like, money matters. Like, buy a ticket to a sporting event that, you know, where there are women playing. Buy jerseys, buy shoes. Just, you know, if you're going to spend money, like, money is power, and do it to help show the market that you value these women and their contributions.
I would also like to add a petty note to that. I think it's really important, yes, to support all of the W leagues, but also tag those teams, tag the WNBA, and ask who the owners are. Ask how many women are in the ownership groups, and ask those teams on social media what profit participation those female players have in their kits, in their jerseys, because the men make money on that stuff and a lot of the women don't. So I think it's also very important as consumers for us to ask why, because as y'all know, the more noise we make about things on the internet, the more things change. And to be clear, I'm also saying this as an owner of an NWSL team. Like, be a pain in our ass. I want more of that.
What was the question? I'm like,
A tangible
Women's
something
sports
to do
Well,
it
this
right
one,
now.
this one.
You want to do women's sports will reach
Follow
their
the
full potential
teams.
when.
Yeah.
Women's sports will make its full potential when we all make it personal. When we know that our stories, like, think about, and I see, it sounds so corny. Think about your mom. Think about your sister, if you're a man. Think about your daughter. Like, make it personal, not make it somebody else's problem. But as women, like, lean in. You talk about buy the apparel, buy the tickets, do every seat matters. Every jersey bought matters. Everything matters. But if you make it personal, then you'll do something about it. It's not just something like, oh, a check mark. Make it personal. And I want everyone to think about why women's sports being successful is personal to you. And really think about that. And when you have that answer, then do something about it. And make it something that you do every single day. So I talked about 15 minutes before. If you do 15 minutes a week, fine, I'm happy. 15 minutes a day would be powerful. But make it personal. And do it, if you haven't had kids yet, do it for your future daughter. I have a 4-year-old girl, and every single day I leave her, go be your own hero, honey. And I say to myself, I'm going to be her hero. Because every conversation matters for her future, her generation. I do not want her to have the realities we had. And you've got to make it personal. And that's when we'll be successful.
You're making me tear up. Yeah.
I would say be an evangelist. Because it's one thing to be supportive, but it's another thing to be like you are in a revival for the progress of women's sports. So be an evangelist. What does that look like? Wear the stuff. Wear the stuff. Take people to a game. Do what you would do as if being a women's sports fan, you're like in an MLM, the greatest multi-level marketing company. You can't get those people. We cannot get those people to shut up about their opportunity, right?
Yeah.
That's what we need for women's sports. Become an evangelist, on fire. Spread the gospel of what the impact is of women who play sport, girls who play sports, and our sports will transform.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously? By the way, Portland plays Angel City. Oh my God.
So I think we have actually have handouts, and you
Yes.
can grab them on your way out.
Tangibles.
The tangible impact, your call to action, the things you can do, big and small, every day. So please take that on our way out for sure.
Yes.
I'll just. I think we do have a couple more minutes so that we have more time than we thought. Is there anybody that has a question?
Yeah, that'd be a great question. Questions, preguntas.
Hi, I'm Davey. My work sits at the intersection of mental health and gender-based violence in sports. But my question, like, I love seeing the rise of professional women's sports, but with the threats of the Department of Education being shut down, I'm kind of curious as investors and advocates how we might help youth sports because, like, as the U.S., we're one of the only countries that don't help our Olympic athletes. And so I'm kind of just curious, like, you know, it actually might affect more men's sports with Title IX being stripped. But, like, do we privatize youth sports? And then does that make them professional? And I just kind of, like, worry about, like, actually professional sports and women, like, plateauing at some point because there's not access for these kids if these programs get cut.
I mean, you want to speak on the,
Well, you're tapping into the development in youth,
it's true.
right? You got a whole league.
League, Olympics, go.
Very quickly, as I was nominated, voluntold to answer this question. It is actually a part of our development. It's professional, grassroots. Look, so that's what I'm doing. I mean, that's what I'm doing, and our team will do, is to start to nurture some of what they can expect in the future of their thing, but also to meet them where they are, especially from a mental health standpoint, because it gets wild out there. But I just think more embedding more youth sports in professional sports is the way to go, is the answer to your question. And I know that they will do that, just like all the other, NWSL, WNBA, that's a big part, but they don't have enough people to do it extremely well, so there may be opportunities for people to build this business that plugs into those businesses so that we can really address the needs of youth.
I think also normalizing it, if we, I mean, the reason I'm here is because we're building this game-changing facility together, and in it we'll have a space for mental health and the athletes, but normalizing the conversations, because these younger people look up to these professional athletes, and when they're able to talk openly about what they're going through and the mental health issues, I mean, we were talking about different things backstage, but having, I know, sorry. I forgot about use this, but having the professional athletes normalize the difficulties that they're going through brings that conversation forefront, and then you have the investors who want to talk about it. You have, politics who want to have the conversations, but I think that's where you tie in having professional sports, making sure that space is spoken about by the athletes because their voice are the loud voices. But then for us, like we have an academy, all of the space that we're creating in this building will be for the academy as well too. But I think the professional athletes, like the mental health issues are with the professional athletes. They've just found a way because they have the sports psychologists and everything to help them through it. But the more that they can talk openly about what they're doing, I think it'll help the overall ecosystem.
And something I think is incredibly important for all of us to pay attention to your point about the Department of Ed and youth sports in general, we've really got to look at the full picture of what's happening here because all of the Department of Ed is under attack. We don't really know where it's going. It's hard to give necessarily the exact right answer of what to do because we're all still bracing to see what this fallout looks like. But something that I think is incredibly important is to look for the folks that are prepared for this. Nia and I both sit on the board of the First Women's Bank with Billie Jean King, so we have a lot of overlap now with the Women's Sports Foundation, and they're prepared for this. They've been campaigning on Title IX. They've been educating lawmakers, year after year during March, they're in DC doing this work. And I think it's incredibly important to follow their lead. One thing that I think is imperative to say is that we have to pay attention to what's really underneath some of the bills and the laws we see. There's a lot of conversation out here right now about protecting women's sports. I'm sure you know, but if you don't, there are 510,000 NCAA athletes. There are under 10 athletes in that entire group that are trans. The bill that just narrowly was divided in the House only by 9 votes, which to me as a person with young children in my life is horrific. Only 9 people stopped this bill from happening, which would make mandatory genital inspection of girls in schools the law in America. And to be clear, trans kids aren't abusing other kids, but lots of young girls get abused in school. We know the statistics, and it's horrific. So we have to be really, really frank about where they are trying to create fear and division among us to put forth really horrific abuse of women and girls. And I would be remiss to not spend the privilege of my platform to say that as more women around America in states like this one that tend to lean more conservative, who look like me, are voting to support women's autonomy and are voting to enshrine abortion in their state constitutions, they have made trans folks the boogeymen. And to be clear, the most at-risk people in the trans community are Black trans women. So racism and sexism are two horns on the same disgusting goat. We cannot ignore the ways that they're gonna continue to try to push back against our autonomy, and that will affect us in our healthcare, that will affect racial justice, that will affect our paychecks, and that will affect women and girls in sport. So I think we have to get really smart about what we see legislatively at the federal level and the state level. And what I would recommend is, if you're concerned about this, figure out how you're gonna rally a bunch of loud women like us to get on your school boards, show up at town halls, go make some noise, because now they're running for the hills and they don't wanna show up. And I'm like, well, we'll show up. Like we can have a town hall of the citizenry and make it clear that we're not gonna allow the Department of Education to be defunded, because sports being free for kids, it's like one of the only safe havens children have anymore. Club sports are great, but if you're not rich, you're not gonna get there. You know, my partner's an Olympian who grew up on food stamps. She wouldn't have been able to play if things were the way they are today. So we have to be really, really clear that the risk of privatizing all of these spaces means that we're just creating more and more barriers to access for people. That's my soapbox moment about that. Thank you very much. It's crazy.
One last quick question. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Tanvi. I was also a former athlete, and now I'm the co-founder of an athletic accessories brand that specializes in high performance and safety. And my question is, if there are brands that are out there that do want to work with women's professional teams or athletes themselves, how do you approach those spaces? You know, especially with big brands out there that most of them are run by men. Approach those spaces and talk to these women, and I guess not even convince them, have them be your allies and support you while you're doing this in a male-dominated space. Sorry,
Well, I would suggest trying to align with the newer, better league.
Yes.
I'm kidding, but I'm joking. I'm kidding, but I'm joking. I'm serious, but I'm joking. That I do mean that, by the way. I do, but there's so much inventory now. So trying to be, I said this in a panel yesterday, trying to be with the University of whomever, Oregon, when they've got the biggest sponsors, go to the next tier, right? So G leagues, other teams, so all the what would be considered like the least desirable because they're not the biggest leagues, those opportunities are wide open. People are still trying to get to the big, just go to the newer, looking for partner opportunity. Yeah.
We have in our portfolio a femtech apparel investment that we're incredibly proud of, and it was created to solve a problem for female athletes, and it's been really amazing for us to see our founder actually find a huge runway with the military. There are so many exceptional avenues for what you're doing that, might not be, the most popular WNBA team in the league first, but there are plenty of places that you can go and expand your business and prove, the worth of your product, and to Fran's point, make the other folks be like, well, what's going on over there? What are they doing over there? It's a really, I think, great piece of advice.
Well, I feel like we should just order pizza and just keep going for an hour. Yeah, but I know we're up against our time, and I just want to thank this incredible group of panelists. I am completely inspired by you, and thank you for your advocacy, your braveness, your boldness. You're raising hell. So thank you all so much. We wish you all the best.
I love this whole conversation like on a podcast that I can listen to in the morning.
Can we thank Populous and Midwest
Yes.
House Calls?
Thank you.
And happy International Women's Day!
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna put down
Let's
my
quick picture.
blanket.